Hey Canelo, if the WBC asks you to either fight Golovkin next or give up the belt, what do?
I'm ready.
You ready? So we're gonna see Golovkin in May or what?
He's ready. I'm ready.
There it is. Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? You know, since you guys are used to hearing what I have to say on all the issues, the boxing issues, of course, you guys always hear what the boxers, the trainers, the promoters that I interview, you get to hear what they say and what they think. I decided it's time for us to hear what you guys think. Welcome to the new series, DBN Polls, where you guys have an opportunity to participate in the actual video. I'm going to incorporate polls into this video. Matter of fact, if you guys look to the right upper hand corner of the screen, you'll see a little small icon, a little eye right there, and if you click on that, you could go ahead and you can vote on this video. And it doesn't matter if you're using your cell phone, your laptop, whatever, you can do it on any type of gadget. It's very easy to do. Matter of fact, you can vote and continue to listen to the video at the same time without any interruptions. So with that out the way, let's go ahead and start with my very first poll. Now, since one of the biggest names just had a fight this past weekend, Gennady Golovkin, let's start with that poll. Okay guys, so once again, we already know that Canelo Alvarez is most likely not going to fight Golovkin next. Because if he were, we would be hearing Canelo Alvarez, Oscar De La Hoya talking about fighting Golovkin next, just like they were talking about fighting Cotto next before they fought James Kirkland, right? But we haven't heard anything like that. The only thing we heard from Canelo after Golovkin's knockout was, look at my resume at 25 and look at Gennady Golovkin's resume. Now, there's no doubt about it, Canelo, he made sense when he said that. He definitely made sense, but it's not the type of reaction you would expect from a guy who wants to fight Golovkin next, right? You would have expected him to say something on the lines of what Gilberto Ramirez just said, which is, you know, I'm ready for Golovkin. You know, right here is a real Mexican. You want to get in the ring with this real Mexican? That's what Ramirez was saying, right? That's not what Canelo Alvarez was saying. Canelo, he just said, hey, I got a better resume than that guy, and left it at that. And before that, Canelo, he was saying stuff like, well, yeah, I'm gonna fight him one day, but I just don't know when it's gonna be. So with that being said, I'm gonna tell you right now, Canelo is not fighting Gennady Golovkin this year. He is not fighting Gennady Golovkin this year. That is almost a guarantee. Almost a guarantee. All right. So with Canelo out of the runnings, so who is Golovkin targeting next? Billy Joe Saunders. Now there's a chance that that fight can actually come to fruition. But there's also a chance that Billy Joe Saunders, he watched the annihilation of Golovkin knocking out Wade in 2 rounds, and he said, you know what? Maybe not. There's a very good chance that's what's going through Saunders' head right now. If you think about it, we haven't really heard too much from Saunders since Golovkin knocked out Wade. And that's usually an indication that he wants no part of Golovkin right now. So just assuming that Golovkin, he can't get Saunders in the ring. He ain't gonna get Canelo Alvarez in the ring, not this year. This is the question I ask you guys, and here's where the poll comes in. I'm gonna give you guys a couple names, and I want you guys to vote on who you think Golovkin should fight next, assuming he can't get Canelo and Saunders. All right, let's get into this. So the first fighter is a Cuban fighter that arguably beat Canelo Alvarez. He's very well known. He's already fought on pay-per-view before, and his name is, yeah, that's right, Erislandy Lara. Erislandy Lara, he's been calling out Golovkin for quite some time. He said he'll move up to middleweight to fight Triple G. And on top of all of that, he would be the best and the biggest name that Golovkin has ever faced to date. All right? So that was the first option. Let's move on to the second one. Now this guy right here, he is the welterweight champion of the world. He was the first fighter to beat Shawn Porter. And yes, his name is Kell Brook. Now Kell Brook is once again another name, another fighter. Matter of fact, all of these fighters that I'm gonna name actually are all bigger names and a bigger challenge for Gennady Golovkin than he's ever faced before. All right. So Kell Brook would be the second choice. Now Kell Brook, he said he's willing to move up to 157. He's calling out Gennady Golovkin. You know, regardless if some of you guys want to say, oh, he doesn't really mean it. He's saying it, but he doesn't really mean it. Listen, the bottom line is Canelo has been calling out fighters that don't even want to fight him. So why wouldn't you take it serious if there's actually a guy who's raising his hand and he's saying, yeah, I want to fight you? Does that make any sense? You're willing to chase a guy who's making it clear he doesn't want to fight you, but then when someone says, hey, Golovkin, I'll fight you, you're going to turn around and say, nah, I don't believe you. I'd rather fight the guy who I know doesn't want to fight me. Let's use some common sense here. So anyway, so Kell Brook is the second choice. Kell Brook, he's calling out Gennady Golovkin. Now, obviously, Floyd Mayweather, there's no name bigger than Floyd Mayweather. And that's the reason why Golovkin would obviously call out the much smaller Floyd Mayweather. But if Golovkin can fight Floyd Mayweather at 154, why wouldn't he even entertain the idea of fighting Kell Brook at 157? All right? Kell Brook, once again, I personally believe that Kell Brook is the most difficult welterweight champion to beat out of all the champions. I was very, very impressed what he did to Shawn Porter. You know, there was some moves in there that was reminiscent of Floyd Mayweather, like the real stiff jab to the midsection, really nice lead right hands. I was really impressed with Kell Brook, and I believe that if he came in at 157, he would be very strong. I don't think it would be like Khan versus Canelo. I think Kell Brook versus Golovkin would be a 50-50 fight. All right? So Kell Brook is the second choice. Third choice, moving up to 168. Golovkin said he was willing to move up to 168 and fight Carl Froch and Julio Cesar Chavez. And he also said he wants to beat all of the champions. Well, this next guy is an undefeated champion. He stands at 6'2" or 6'3", and he has just beat Arthur Abraham and looked very good doing it. That is the newly crowned super middleweight champion, Gilberto Ramirez. Gilberto Ramirez, he just recently called out Golovkin. He says he's ready when Golovkin is ready. He says to Golovkin, right here stands a real Mexican fighter. What you gonna do with it? I'm paraphrasing, but that's pretty much what Ramirez was saying on some J.O. felony. I can give it to you, Golovkin, but what you gonna do with it? Okay? That's what Gilberto Ramirez is saying. So you have the third choice, real good choice. And matter of fact, Golovkin's trainer likes that option. You know, Abel Sanchez, he told me, he said that would be a great matchup. That, you know, they could put it in Texas where it'll be a big Mexican crowd. I mean, shit, you could build it as Mexican style versus the Mexican fighter, whatever, right? It would be a big fight. Not only that, but we get to see Golovkin in the ring with a fighter with the same type of confidence that he has, right? Because a fighter can be undefeated. Like Dominic Wade, he was undefeated. And you know, I do give Golovkin, even though no one had ever heard of Dominic Wade really, and he wasn't, you know, Keith Thurman type of undefeated fighter, but he did have an O on his record. And, you know, so I do give Golovkin credit for finally beating a young undefeated fighter, right? But it's a lot different when it comes to a fighter with the experience and the confidence of a Gilberto Ramirez. He just dominated, a champion. He just beat a champion in Arthur Abraham. All right. So, and then with his height, with him being at a higher weight class, that kind of almost balances out the power advantage that Golovkin always has over all of his opponents at the middleweight division, right? That makes for a very, very good fight. All right. So let's move on to the next option, or the next choice. So the next choice would be the man from the UK, the best fighter at 168 right now, and that is James DeGale. This man, he switches from righty to lefty. He just came off a very impressive win, not his last fight, but he beat Andre Dirrell, someone that coincidentally Golovkin actually beat in the Olympics, right? And he's a gold medalist. Very slick style. He can fight on the inside, he can fight on the outside. And he is, since Andre Ward moved up to 175, no doubt about it, DeGale is the best fighter at 168. Okay? So that is another choice. Now, while you guys are voting and making your selection, keep in mind, Gennady Golovkin just recently said he wants to fight a big name. All four of these fighters that I just mentioned, they all have bigger names than any fighter that Golovkin has ever faced before. All right? So there you have it, guys. I look forward to seeing the results of the poll, and I might even do a post-poll video once the results come in and talk about that as well. And I want you guys to understand, don't think I'm naive at all. I know when I do these polls, there are a lot of decafs in the world, and a lot of these votes are going to be extremely subjective with some of these decafs. So I understand that. I take that with a grain of salt, but it will still be interesting to see, how the results play out. So go ahead, guys, make your pick, and I'll check it out. I look forward to seeing the results. Like I said before, that's all I got. I'm on to the next one.
This is Bobby, and you're watching Dante's Boxing Nation.